Hello, Dr. Emily Hecker here, and we are doing this first webinar series called Calm Through the Chaos. I am so excited that you're here today, despite this craziness that's going on outside of our homes that we're seeing. We can't go places, so there's chaotic stuff going on, and we see that. We want to help you. That's why we've created this whole webinar series where we can bring in that calm, bring in actionable things that you can do to implement in your everyday life. So I'm excited to do this and to host this with my dear colleague and friend, Amy Hadden. I do want to give some updates first to patients or non-patients that are watching this and you want to know kind of what I am or who I do. So I'm a functional medicine doctor. I'm a chiropractic physician. I specialize in functional medicine and getting the root cause of illness through lifestyle changes. I love to do scientific data testing. I love that. And we really bring in lifestyle changes and nutritional support with what I do. So I do have a few updates for current patients that I have and non-patients. So I have a sale on supplements going on right now. If you're looking for that zinc, if you're looking for those immune support nutrients, I have 10% off my supplements on my full script page, which I'll link to this. I also have changed hours because I'm working from home. And when I'm working from home, I have 2 kids that burst in the door at any minute. So I've changed my hours a little bit just to accommodate this, especially since I'm now a teacher, on top of being mom and on top of being doctor. So I've changed my hours to be working in the evening more to be available. So once my kids have done with the day, between 3 and 8, I'm available to you, especially on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're going to run with it. And we're going to see how that goes with the evening hours. And let's see here, discounts on my services. So if you know someone or if you're watching this and you haven't had an appointment in a while, I have made discounts on all of my services through May 12th, which is my birthday. I turned 40. And that is, I know. And so I'm doing 20% off all of my services, which I've never done discounts before. So I just want to recognize that we're going through some financial struggles right now. Everybody is with the uncertainty, and I want to bring that and that support into this. So those are my current updates. We are still open. We are still doing service here at Enlightened Functional Medicine. I'm just doing it from a spare bedroom. That's where I am right now. So we're just doing some virtual stuff, and it's beautiful because it's what we've always been doing. Now, why are we having this conversation? And the reason why we're having this conversation with Amy Hadden is because health starts at home, right? Which is where everyone is right now. What does it look like when we're at home? A lot, kids and all. That's why we're having this how to balance a pandemic, how to balance kids through the pandemic and self-care. So there's a lot of stuff going on with this. And I'm gonna now lead it into Amy Hadden. I wanna give her a nice introduction here. So Amy is a functional medicine certified health coach, okay? She spent the last 15 years in education, specializing in early childhood and elementary education, as well as time teaching online in the classroom and working in organizational development and communities. She believes in positive psychology, okay, functional medicine, and the powerful connection between the body and the mind. She can shed light on ways to develop healthier and happier families. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Dr. Emily. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. You have so much to give to us. You really, really do. I'm so excited to have you here. So today we're talking about balancing the pandemic and kids and self-care. Yeah. That's a lot in one sentence, isn't it?
It really is. And I don't know if you're like me, but about 6 weeks ago, my husband was planning travel to go to Europe for business, and we had some kind of little conversation about that, and he's like, oh yeah, well, a lot can happen in 6 weeks. And when we had that conversation, I never would have dreamt in a million years that this is where we would be, where all of a sudden we're stay-at-home moms and families, that a lot of us are business owners trying to balance both being a homeschool mom, teacher, and running a business, and providing the environments that we need to flourish and thrive. And didn't sign up for this, but here we are, first timers, all learning how to do this together.
We are learning this together. I know, and it's hard because I go through these days, even like to now, like my roots are starting to show. I know this is a big thing. There's lots of memes on Facebook out there that are going on with like, okay, what is my hair really going to look like? My kids starting to look like shaggy dogs. With their hair. We're going to see, we don't have a shaver in our house, but we're going to see, and we're going to pull through this together. but we got to self-care, right? We got to take care of ourselves through these times. So I'm excited to see what you have to say about self-care. Really, like what are some things that we should be doing with self-care as far as we should be approaching it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that I would start with like, what is self-care, right? Because it's one of those kind of trendy words that you might read on a My Buddy Green article, or, you see here and there, but what is it? And, just preparing for today, I was looking at this definition and it said self-care is not a to-do list. And I thought that is the best definition, I think, for someone like me who's very achievement oriented, who's a doer and working on being a human being more than just a human doing. Just having that self-care element means kind of tapping into what makes me me, and what brings kind of that holistic health in all areas of well-being. And if you're kind of a super fan of functional medicine and a holistic lifestyle like I am, and I know Dr. Emily is, a lot of it can sometimes gravitate to the checklist. Like, this is the protocol, and this is the foods you should be eating, shouldn't be eating, and this is the exercise routine. And there is such a place for all of that. And that can be so, so valuable. But I think when we're talking in this conversation and in this context, it's really about kind of taking a pause and saying, what do I need holistically, not just physically in my body and my diet and what I'm doing, but like, what do I need in my environment? What do I need spiritually? What do I need emotionally and in my relationships? So self-care could look like 1,000 different things. And hopefully in this conversation today, we can kind of take away some of those little flowers that will brighten our day in kind of dark, stormy, really scary times, that will bring a little bit of meaning and purpose.
That's wonderful. That's so cute. I love that you said, it's not a to-do list, because I'm a to-do list kind of person. I'm a type A, and I have those things. And it's funny because so I have children. I have 2 boys that are 7 and 8, and we're doing this whole homeschooling thing together. And I have my to-do list. I'm very strict on my schedule, and man, what I've found doing this is that one day I rely on that schedule and I'm right on. And then the next day, I can't follow that because we all got up too late. We can't walk the dog first thing in the morning, because if we do, it'll put the whole schedule off, so it really is taking a step back. I agree with you, and looking at all of the different aspects of, not the to-do list. It's hard for us that are type A's to kind of step back and let things roll, and make sure we're taking care of ourselves first.
Yeah. What comes to mind when you say that, Dr. Emily, is, as a fellow type A who loves control, I think that's one of the reasons that I went into teaching, right? They say people go into teaching because they like organization and they like to be in charge. Awesome kids. But, right. Where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves in a place where we have no control. Like, we are at home and sheltering in place, but there's so much that we can't control. So there can be a tendency to really take a schedule and hold it really tightly. But sometimes, like you said, it might be wise to just look at the circumstance, listen to your own body, kind of look at your kiddos and listen to what you see them saying and doing, and notice maybe what's going on in their own little nervous systems, and respond in a way that is both life-giving to them and to you. So you can see my schedule over here in the back. This is for my 5-year-old Luke. Do you know how many days we've actually done that schedule in the past 2 weeks? I mean, maybe 3 out of 2 weeks. And I actually see that as a huge win, because it's meant that I've noticed, okay, you know what? My kid responds really well to eating breakfast on a picnic blanket in the backyard and listening to the birds. And so we've started doing that instead of our step 1, which was scholastic literacy and eating breakfast and listening to online books, right? So, I think what I'm hearing is an ebb and flow. I think that's super healthy.
That's so key. With the self-care, when we think about this, okay, we're doing self-care for ourselves because we have to take care of these little creatures that we've created. How in the world can we do this in a pandemic? How can we do self-care in a pandemic?
Right, absolutely. I saw this fun post that was talking about self-care, and they talked about children being the little parasites that suckle the life out of us. And if you're a mom of multiple children, especially if they're young, or even one that just requires a lot of energy, you may be feeling that right now, because you give, right? Like as a mom, you give a lot. And right now you're not just there to provide that emotional support, do the laundry, make sure they're wearing clean undies, but you're also there to provide this educational piece that maybe you weren't doing before. And even if you were already a homeschooling mom, gosh, like things have just changed, right? You're not socializing with your group friends anymore. Things are closed and you're stuck inside. So things are really complicated. But back to that self-care piece in a pandemic, what does that look like? Well, if we go back to the parasite analogy, the host, right? Like you know this. I mean, Dr. like that parasite's only going to be as healthy as the host, right? So if our kids are feeding off of us, it's up to us to kind of take care of us first. That analogy of the oxygen mask coming down and that being step one before we care for someone else, that's super key. Now, how do we do that concretely? Like all of the people out there who are like waiting for us to just like give a checklist, right? I hear you. I see you. I am often one of you. I would say start small, right? Because as much as we like that control, and if you're like me, you gravitate to that, and this is my like deep work time, and this is where I write, and this is the time where I do this. Like right now, everything is super integrated and meshy and messy, and sometimes really, really frustrating. Like, let's be honest. And so I think that it honestly comes down to celebrating the small and finding self-care in small places.
Mm-hmm. That's so key. I've been trying to do that myself, during these times, and finding, okay, what can I do? I notice, because anxiety is huge right now. And I'm sure all of us are experiencing it because we don't know what's going on, and who do we know that's being affected, negatively, and, in the hospital with this. And I find my anxiety welling up. One of the self-care tips that I've been doing is I actually dust off my gym downstairs, my little gym that we've made, but I haven't been using it. And it's so helpful just to go in there. And you know what? I'm not spending 45 minutes on the treadmill. I don't have time for that right now. I have 15 minutes that I could use. Actually, I have 10 minutes, and I have 5 minutes where I could lift a few weights. Mm-hmm. So by integrating those small little things of movement, which is so big for me, that is one of the self-care tips that I've been doing, that sometimes I just push that to the side because eating is number one. Hydration for me personally is really big. Those basic steps that you were saying. So, yeah, those are just some things that I've been trying to implement, but feeding on that as well. With that, Amy, what are some tips that moms use to balance the craziness of life right now with their own health and well-being? What are some tips that you can give?
Absolutely. I'd love to just kind of have this conversation today and hope that any listener would be able to find maybe one or two things that apply to their lives. We're having this conversation, and obviously, Dr. Emily, you are an expert in functional medicine. That's what you do. And I come back from this background of education and online education, and now functional medicine coaching and positive psychology coaching. And with that, I would say that you are the expert in your own life, listener. And so whatever you hear today that fits you, like that's what you take, right? So some of these tips might kind of go more towards like an early childhood kind of family that is going through some things. Some might kind of lean more towards teens. So, take what fits for you and let the rest kind of settle in the dust. But yeah, so let's share some tips. So number one, get back to the basics, right? The basics. So when I'm talking about that, what am I saying? I'm going back to kind of what you were just saying, Dr. Emily, like the movement piece, that's key. I heard you talk about nutrition, that's key. You said hydration, that's key. When we talk about functional medicine being this holistic care of self, in my training, we talk about the functional medicine matrix. And then at the bottom of the matrix, we have what are the 5 pillars. And so those are what we just talked about: the nutrition, the hydration, the social relationships, which is so hard right now, right? On one hand, we're so isolated. And on the other hand, gosh, we're getting a whole big dose of some relationships with our family members, right? Oh yeah, more than we bargained for and asked for. So movement, all of those things, those are the foundation of health. And so talk about care, I would say number one is we have an opportunity to check in with ourselves and just kind of see where we're at. And maybe not so much in a, okay, this is a report card and I'm going to get straight A's, but more in a, I wonder what would really kind of shift my day. What would shift the way that I feel, how I would view life, what would give me more resiliency with these small human beings that are driving me crazy. Maybe it's going back and asking your partner to watch the kiddos and put them to bed so you can have a walk under the stars or a run, like when nobody else is out there. So very easy social distancing. Maybe, it's something that's less of kind of a movement or a hydration or a nutrition piece. Maybe it's more like an internal who you are piece. Maybe it's getting back to music for you or art or finding ways to integrate these other parts of your personality, right? Um, because so often when we think of health, I've been super guilty of this. We just think of those macros and micro, like all of these subcomponents of what makes a healthy diet or what makes a healthy movement program. But there are so many things that make us a healthy human.
That's so key. That's so key. It's funny. Yesterday, like I say, we go in cycles. One day we have a good day. One day we have a bad day. Yesterday was a pretty crazy bad day. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a reset button. And I grabbed something in the kitchen and it was actually something from the wall that you hang up. It was one of the light switches. Cover. It was a light switch cover. And I'm like, that looks like a good button that the kids can like push. And so I put a little note on it that said reset button or redo button. And I wanted to be able to redo this because I find myself going through these times where we're going up and down. It's like, you know what? We need to start over today. And a lot of times people, especially when you're watching what you're eating, this comes in terms of diet. So many times people will have, a bad meal and they'll make it into a bad day.
Yeah.
And say like, oh, I'll start with that tomorrow. Like, who do you know that is like, oh, I'll start that tomorrow. We'll just finish it off today and we'll start on Monday. We'll start this. It's like, you know what? We need to bring these redo buttons back in more frequently through our day right now because we're on the roller coaster from hell, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I found that pretty valuable to bring in that reset, that redo button for the kids. And you know what? They each pressed it. It was a physical touch. Okay, we're going to all press. Mama's going to press this button.
Yeah.
We can have a better rest of the day with that. So
that is genius. I love that. I think that there's so much grace in that too, right? Like one, it's just something very concrete. We're talking about these abstract things. And if you're dealing with a small child, like they deal in concrete first. That's like when you teach math, you start with manipulatives and then you go to the abstract numbers. Having a concrete thing that is the reset button or the redo button, I think is so great because cognitively the kids can kind of wrap their heads around that. And they can, you guys are also sharing a common language, which is great. Like, so you can say, mom needs a reset button right now. Like, right. Like you just had a really frustrating Zoom call where Zoom crashed on you 10 times. Like you need the reset button, right? And they have the permission to do it too. I think that's really amazing. Yeah. I think I might steal that from you. Is that okay?
Anything that will help people, I think we're all coming up with these things, a little tactics of what's working for us or that we may come up with. And it's kind of refreshing in a way, to see what we're doing, but getting that guidance and really limiting that negative component. Cause I know I keep hearing you talk about positive psychology.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I love about positive psychology is that it as a field was created to look instead of like the pathology side, what's wrong with human beings? Like, let's look at all the mental illnesses. Let's look at everything that's going wrong. Someone said, hey, let's study everything that's right. A lot of times positive psychology will be called the science of flourishing, thriving, and what are the components of well-being that's not just leading to happiness, because that's kind of a fleeting feeling, but more so what leads to a purposeful and meaningful life. So within the realm of positive psychology, there's so many great things we could talk about. But one thing I definitely want to hit on is this acronym that I've found has been super helpful for me right now. It was created by Dr. Tal Ben Shahar, and it's SPIRE, SPIRE. And if you know the word spire, I didn't know this, it's super interesting to me. The spire can be the top of a really tall building, like a church or a skyscraper. So it's like the pinnacle. So like, woohoo, we made it. And it is also related to breath, like respiration, right? Something that I'm finding I need to just intentionally weave into my day is just some deep breaths. I was playing hide and seek with Luke the other day because it's his favorite thing to do, right? I'm like, oh, I really need to work on my computer, but okay. And so I'm hiding behind the bathroom door like always. And I found myself just putting my hand on my heart and taking 3 intentional deep breaths as a pause. So that respiration is so great for the nervous system, taking us out of fight or flight, bringing us more into that parasympathetic place so that there's kind of more access to that prefrontal cortex and you can just kind of be. So respiration and breathing, super key. But back to the model, inspire, let's go through those letters, right? So S is the spiritual domain. And in positive psychology, they would say that that is anything that is connecting to anything that's greater than you. And for me, that is my faith, which is near and dear and foundational to all that I am. So for me during this time, I have to be super intentional about finding times of just silence, honestly, and prayer. And so for me, that is a dark room, a quiet house, a warm lamp. And sometimes there's music, sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's a journal. Sometimes there's writing down 3 things that I'm thankful for. Those are all components that I'm finding really helpful to kind of feed into the S part of the spirituality. So P is physical. What do you need physically to have health and well-being? So this goes back to kind of what you're saying, dusting off that equipment in the basement, finding small moments. Maybe you don't have time for like, an hour super crazy CrossFit workout, but maybe you can lift a couple of weights here and there. Maybe honestly, it's just going for a walk. For those of you who are like me and you've gone through some kind of crazy hormonal things and your adrenals are just like, getting stronger, but you got to honor them. For me, it's power walking and it's walking up and down the big hills here. So that's S. P was physical, or S was spiritual, P was physical. I is intellectual. So during this time, I would say in this pandemic, it could be something like, where am I getting my news from? Or how am I feeding my curiosity? If you've always wanted to learn how to, sew, and so you're looking into videos on YouTube, or you want to take an online class from Harvard on neurobiology, well, you go for it, and I'll sign up with you too. So intellectually, we can both guard our mind and choose information that we're bringing in, and also kind of feed that curiosity that feeds ourselves. So that's I. R is relational, which we talked on before. It can be really challenging right now, right? Because we're stuck with the people that we hopefully love the most. But right. But we need outlets, don't we? Like for other connection. I'm finding it really fun that even in this craziness, even just socially, I've gone back to Facebook on social media and reconnecting with friends from college and high school. And there's something really powerful, I feel like, even in that. So relational health, what do you need to do right now relationally? For us, with Luke, we're having to be really intentional about him and his friends. So he needs connection. So we're talking to relatives. We're playing videos of his friends from his class. They don't have, junior kindergarten right now, but they have video show and tells back and forth, which is super fun and helpful. So that's the relational piece. And the last one is E, which is emotional. Like, what do you need emotionally? And I find for me, like, I know that I've like reached the end of myself and I get super snippy. I'm like, don't do that. Put that away. Put away your toys. And my expectations go way up high. Like I have to have every toy cleaned up off the floor. And I just become way more reactive. So I think for me to kind of guard those emotions, I need to go back to kind of those things we talked about before. I think the spiritual space and making sure I'm feeding my curiosity and letting myself read the books that I want to intellectually, that can give me a little bit more breathing room in the E. But yeah, so action steps might be for a listener, hey, what in those letters kind of resonated with you as something you might want to kind of take a step with, like, maybe you went to ask your partner if you can, have them do bedtime and you go for a walk. Or maybe you want to see if you can still get some paint off Amazon and paint something. Check in with yourself and see what would feed you.
I love that, Amy. Those are some key acronyms that mean some huge things in our lives, to make sure we're getting back to the basics, like you said, of the basic things. And I don't know, I don't know if it's you, but I feel like I can easily access and simplify things right now. I feel like, okay, I can just, what are essential, just we're hearing these non-essential, essential topics, going on in the news. And I feel like it's a little bit easier right now to say, okay, what's essential? What do we need to do to survive, as a family? And that's homeschooling, that's cooking dinner, what are the main things? I kind of feel like it's easier to make those choices. And I think it's because we're being pushed into a place where we have to make those critical decisions for us to really survive and be happy. That's just my personal experience that I've seen with it. Maybe some people aren't experiencing that and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start. I'm so overwhelmed with things. Where do I start? And I think that Spire is a fantastic way to hone in and bring things back in, and to simplifying your life right now.
Yeah, I think, again, first time pandemic for us. I think all those emotions are normal. And I think just kind of realizing and respecting the fact that if you feel overwhelmed, and you can't create a schedule, or you are just barely letting your kid do the 3 worksheets they're supposed to do for the day or whatever, that's totally okay. Or if you are finding yourself super excited about creating a kindergarten classroom in your kitchen, then you do it, right? And whatever you are feeling, whether it be super overwhelmed or super anxious or grasping at straws to try to figure out how to kind of find a sense of calm, that's all really, really normal right now. Yeah. So I'd like to share another tip with you, because we're kind of talking about those responses that are really unique to each individual, right? We're all going to respond in different ways. And tip number 2 that I want to share today is about the uniqueness of your kiddos. So whether you have one kiddo or a couple kiddos or a host of kiddos, they're super unique, right? So I'm really curious, Dr. Millie, how would you say, what are the differences that you see between Max and Leo?
Oh my gosh, they're so different. And you know what, so many people are saying, wow, this is a blessing because I'm seeing this. I like to see the positive, saying on that positive side. I'm able to actually see how my kids are learning in school now. Whereas before I wasn't able to, because I couldn't sit in on their class every day and watch. I could only rely on what the teacher was telling me. Now I'm actually able to physically see how one child is doing and learning and progressing and how the other one is doing. And they're completely opposite. I have one child that is a go-getter, that he has his list of things he has to do for the day. He's like, Mom, I'm doing it. Let's do it. He goes off in his room and he does it. He puts in his Zoom number. He's doing his class Zooms. He's on top of it. Then I have another child that's complete opposite, that he requires every single second of my time to walk through each one of these different, okay, now we need to look at this schedule. Okay, but I need to have a recess now. Every 10 minutes, oh, I need to have a recess. I'm like, no. We can have a little bit. But it's that transition getting back into the schoolwork. So today we tried something different where we just nailed out a ton of information before lunch. And that was exciting to him because he thought, wow, I could have the whole day to play if I get all this done before lunch. And it worked today.
Oh, awesome.
Today it worked. But they're
nice.
different, one is, their personalities are so different, when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I hear that you're really honoring those differences and kind of finding out how each kid ticks to kind of strategize how you want to set up that day. And I don't use the word bribery, but kind of give those incentives that help propel forward and honestly just kind of makes your day easier as an entire family, right? Yeah. So those uniquenesses that you talked about are great examples. Some other examples I might want to throw in come back to, there's a Harvard psychologist, Howard Gardner, who came up with theories in like the 80s called the multiple intelligence theory. And this kind of just talks about, hey, you know what, intelligence is not just your IQ score, but intelligence is also these different domains. So you can have one kiddo who's super into music, or another kiddo who's into like sports, and like super great at running, and they really understand like where they are in the field in relationship to other people. And it's honestly like just this gifting of being able to have this great awareness of where their body is in space and where like the ball needs to go in order to succeed. So it used to be 8 multiple intelligences from Gardner. I think now that it's up to like 9. But just to give you an example, those are visual spatial, linguistic verbal, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. So one of those is interpersonal, kind of like your kiddo who's super empathetic, like knowing how another friend feels, like is crying during recess because their friend like skinned their knee and like now they're crying. And the kid who like really needs that connection is an interpersonal one. And an intrapersonal one is the kiddo who's probably like doodling in a journal, like writing poetry, and like totally into their own feelings. Other domains are logical, mathematical, musical, bodily kinesthetic, like we talked about before, naturalistic. This is where my kiddo, I think he shines in the spatial reasoning one, because he makes amazing structures out of magnetic blocks. And also the naturalist in him is just so obvious to me right now, because you know life is indoor, outdoor, like that is all life is right now. So we're trying to spend a lot more time outside, and I'm noticing his intense just perception of details as we go through, and he's noticing like, oh, that tree, it's like budding now or whatever, and he's really into those details. So a naturalistic kid might look like that. And then a last one that Gardner's thrown in there is the existential, kind of looking at those bigger questions of life, of meaning and purpose and all of that. So why are we talking about that, and why does this even matter in this conversation? And I would say that it's something that you could potentially, as a parent, as you're trying to pedal through each day and just make that bike go up the hill, it might be something that is like a flashlight to shine onto like your questions, like, oh my gosh, this kid will not like sit down and write their spelling words, and they're supposed to like write these 10 words, and it's just such a thing. Well, maybe if they are a naturalistic kiddo, kind of like mine, maybe going outside and getting out the sidewalk chalk and letting them hear the birds sing and like smelling the grass that's growing, like all of those things might be enough for them to kind of be more in a zone so that they can function optimally. So you know, that's just kind of another tool that people can lean in on when they're feeling like, gosh, the monotony is driving me crazy. You know, week 1, online learning, kind of cool and fun. Week 2, moms and dads are probably like, okay, we're having to find a little bit more ways to add some variety to life. So looking at what makes your kid tick in these ways could be helpful.
Love that. You know, it's kind of like personality tests with adults, you know, all these different discs or you know, personality tests. You know, do they have anything like that for kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I love that I work with my health coaching clients that also has a survey for kids is the VIA Character Strength Survey. And this is viacharacter.org. So anybody listening right now, if you're bored, you can hop on over there. And this is a way to look at the key components of your personality that make you you, that are these unique strengths that come in unique combinations for all of us, right? I think this is so key. They had a study that people who utilize their top strengths, and I can't remember if it's the top 5 or the top 10, because those are the ones you rely on the most out of these 24 key components that scientists have found are universal across cultures, across geographical location. These 24, out of your top 5 or 10, people who utilize those on a daily basis in their job, your kids at school, you know, in and how you parent your child. Those people are like 18 times more likely to report having a successful, flourishing, purposeful life. And that doesn't come from working from your list of weaknesses and trying to bump them up, but it comes from really digging into your top ones. So that's why the word strength is so key here, because it's really this idea of, by utilizing what you're already strong at, you can intentionally find both success in what you're doing, and then also work on what you have to be a little bit lower too. So in kiddos, you could take the survey if you wanted. They have to be 10 years older for it to actually, they say, to be, legit for the kids to kind of understand, because some of these questions are a little bit more abstract, dealing with emotions and feelings and, honesty and all
So
of those things.
in that test, are you answering it online, or are you bringing the kid in with you and you're asking the child questions? And
Yeah. I would recommend, if they're an elementary kiddo, that you as a parent are there with them. And, every kid's so different, and with their reading ability and comprehension, that's really kind of hard for me to answer kind of as a blanket statement. But I think honestly, I would suggest that parents take it first in the adult version and kind of get their results, and then maybe have the kiddo come in and take that too. And as an action step, if you're looking for something to do, you could print out these results and put them on your fridge and see what it changes for you in really hard times, right? They say that knowing your strengths can be such key to resiliency, and that by celebrating the strengths in your child, whether that be their creativity, whether that be their kindness, whether that be their honesty or their love of learning, or any of these 24 characteristics that kind of relate to transcendence or wisdom or connection, celebrating these can build up your kiddo, and we kind of forget that in this time, like, they're feeling the stress too, right? It's not just that they're not going to school, like they're picking up on all of our stress. So anything that we can do to kind of fill into their bucket. Oh, hey, I noticed that you're having a really hard time opening that jar to get out your Lego pieces or whatever, and you decided to try this, and that was super creative, way to go. Like, just simple moments like that, it seemed like nothing. Honestly, our bucket kind of is feeding their resiliency, their self-esteem, and their ability to connect. So yeah.
I love it. That is so cool. I can't wait. My son is almost 9. And so I'm curious. I know he's not 10 yet, but I kind of want to do it for him, for myself and for him, just to give, I'm a data person. I want to see what we can do to make our kids flourish at this time, because I know that's what all of us parents who have kids, that's what, we're wanting to do, is to making sure that they don't get behind in their schooling, and especially with the rest of the school year, and going through however long this goes through, through summertime. And even take the pandemic aside, this is all amazingly useful information to make you a better parent. So I think this is huge information that can help you parent better. And when you parent better, you're going to have happier kids, you're going to be happier, and that's going to affect your overall life and well-being with self-care. So I love all these tips that you have, Amy. This is so fantastic and thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Is there anything else that you would say, like tip-wise, you would bring in one other tip?
Yeah, absolutely. So the last thing that I really want to hit on is kind of, one, we kind of talked about checking expectations, rolling with the flow. I think that's super important in this time, not only for yourself, but for your kids. So just like you might need to throw out a couple of the to-do list items for yourself and what you thought you could accomplish in the day. For me, that's housework. Like, I had this expectation that I'm going to get so many loads of laundry done, or, the bathroom is going to be, look like this, and it looks like this. Check those expectations for yourself, but also just kind of see what happens when you're aware of the expectations you might be holding on your kids, and realizing that their nervous systems are under such stress too, that they might need an extra dose of grace, and kind of maybe question, what does kindness to them look like, and the expectations you're giving them, and something that I'm asking myself all the time. I still don't have that down. One more thing in the self-care arena would be that there are three things that I would like to leave your listeners with today that are just really quick self-care and self-regulation things that they can do to find a little bit of calm in a whole lot of chaos. So we've already touched on number one a little bit, and that's just breathe. And I gave you the example of hiding behind the door during hide and seek, right? So you may already have a mindful breathing practice. And if you do, like, you're totally hitting a home run. I think leaning in that would be great right now. Mindfulness is just being aware of the present moment, right? And so mindful breathing is being aware of the present moment in connection to your breath, and letting your breath kind of guide that awareness of the inhale and the exhale. And it kind of takes you out of this like automatic, always planning. Your brain is always like 10 steps ahead of you, and it brings you to this place that's here, and it allows you for a little bit more calm. So if you're not already doing, some mindfulness meditations online and you just want to get started, I say you can, and it's really easy. And it starts with 3 deep breaths. And for you, that might be closing your eyes. For you, that might be just like resting your eyes gently in front of you. For you, it might be placing a hand on your heart. It might be sitting and letting your feet touch the ground so you feel really grounded to the earth. It might be laying down on the ground, and like I said before, the dark room, the warm lamp, the quiet house, like finding a place and just taking 3 breaths. And it doesn't even have to be that kind of like utopian, I'm all by myself and life is wonderful kind of thing. It can be, oh my gosh, I'm like totally 5 minutes late for this other Zoom call, and my kid came in on the last one, and now there's ketchup all over the wall, and now I have to look super professional and like I have everything together. You have time for 3 deep breaths. And I would ask you to notice like the difference that you feel in your body after having a full inhale and then a complete exhale. And just seeing if you can even let that exhale be longer than the inhale, because that really gets that benefit of getting into more of a parasympathetic state. So number 1, that first step was just breathe, even if it's just 3 deep breaths.
Love it.
Number 2, move outdoors. We're stuck inside so much. Get outside and move. You talked about moving in the gym downstairs in the basement. I think that's great too. If it's a sunny day, there's something super healing about nature, and there's studies about forest bathing and what just being in the fresh air and just seeing green does for us. People talk about the benefit of even just looking out the window. If you're in the middle of all your typing and all your conferencing online, if you can take just a second to look at the grass outside your window, there can be something there that can soothe your nervous system and kind of bring you back into the present.
I'm going to add to that, Amy. I'm going to say, especially if people are in a room that they don't have a window, maybe change the desktop background on your computer to something more nature oriented. I think that might even be a little, even though it's technology, it might be a little more tip just to get into that place in your brain where, what can I do? What little steps can I do on my computer screen right now? Maybe change the family picture to a more relaxing that's going to calm you in these times. So I love that outdoors. I'm such an outdoor. I love outdoors. It's so healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a great tip too, because that desktop's right in front of you, right? So that can be something that you are there, and you can even imagine yourself there by the beach or there, in the tropics with the palm tree or whatever you're looking at right there. Because the brain is so powerful, right? Like just having that moment of kind of visualizing and imagining. We talk about, like our little kids watching Daniel Tiger and they imagine all the time, but we forget as adults, it's super powerful. Like our brain doesn't know a lot of the times the difference between thinking of a memory and then being here in the present and knowing what's happening right now. So even just like you said, looking at that beautiful nature scape on the screen and connecting with that kind of in an emotional place and maybe adding in a couple of deep breaths, I wonder what that would do for a nervous system, right? Very cool. Okay, so last one, number 3 of our quick ways to add in some self-regulation and self-calm is honestly just check in. Like, if you're like me and you are a doer and a go-getter and you have your checklist, it's really easy to just go and not take the moment to say, okay, what am I feeling right now in my body? Is my heart racing? Can I feel the tension in my neck? Those are all, your body's giving you clues all day long to its state. And if you can check in, it can give you a pause and maybe propel you to go back to maybe one of those other 2 steps, and take a deep breath or do something else, or maybe make a plan for one of the things we talked about at the beginning, inspire, and going back to what you want to change. So big picture, self-care, small things, small steps, little ways for holistic health.
I love it. This is such good information, and it's so simple yet so complicated in some ways that we can do, but it mirrors and it just meshes so well with what we're doing in functional medicine. We're bringing the diet changes, we're bringing the diagnostic tests, we're bringing nutritional supplementation that's going to really replenish and heal, and giving yourself a break. And when you add in these key steps just to keep your calm through this, especially this chaotic time, you're going to set yourself up for success. And that's what I want you, Amy, you to do, as well as all the listeners that are listening to this too, is you have it and you can do it. And you have the power to choose how you make your day and what you can do and how much you plan in your day. So maybe it's, like you said, checking in and crossing off those things that you have high expectations. I'm going to do all this stuff today. Maybe review that, and just do these small things to help you through this time. I think this is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, if there's one more thing I can leave your listeners with, I have a couple of resources that they may find beneficial. So I'll go ahead and throw that their way, kind of verbally, and hopefully in the coming days, this can be something that can be shared online too. But I am going to be offering some support to moms during this time and some group session formats. So starting the first Saturday in April, and then continuing through all the Saturdays through May, I'm hosting just drop-in, check-in group coaching sessions for moms. And it's a time where we can talk a little bit about some of those grounding techniques that we talked about before, like the breath, and just honestly get some of that good social connection. So if you're interested in that, we're going to meet on Saturdays at 3 p.m. You can send me a message through the Enlighten website. I actually have a form there, and you can let me know, and I can let you know exactly where you need to go for that. And secondly, so that was number 1, if you're not a mom and Saturdays don't work for you or whatnot, I'm also offering some one-on-one strength and resilience sessions. And we talked about the VIA Character Strength Survey today in our conversation. And if that was kind of intriguing to you or exciting and you just want to know more, I'm offering a free session to kind of explore that with you. Or if you have a kiddo who's 10 years old or older, a teen who would be interested, you can also reach out to me to find out more.
Oh, I love it. So those are ways that people can get in contact with you, learn your techniques. You're gifted, Amy. You really are. You've been a teacher. I've known you for years now. And I'm so happy that you are using your God-given gift to help people with this. So to recap, those 2 things are these mom group sessions that are going to be on Saturdays. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's such a great resource, as well as these one-on-one strength and resilience sessions, which are great. We'll put a link in this context somehow that people can go there and connect with you so they can calm their chaos a little bit more. So Amy, thank you so much for being on this, for partnering with me doing this Calm Through Chaos series. This is number 1. And we'll take it from here. We'll bring you nuggets of information that's going to make your life valuable. We're going to pick the brain of things that are going on that we can help each other with and through the community with. So thank you so much for being with us, Amy.
Thank you, Dr. Emily.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. And we'll connect later. Have a great day.